Hey, what's up guys, Jaeky here. Today we're going to be checking out the Motion Series mousepads from Fantech. Huge shout out to Fantech for setting this out for review. This is their new mousepad series that follow the 5 elements. Not too long ago, I reviewed a Hall Effect keyboard that also followed the theme of elements, which is pretty funny. I guess someone is eventually going to come out with mice that follow these 5 elements. But either way, pretty cool idea. There are 5 different variants. You have earth, water, fire, wind, and lightning. I was only sent water and fire, unfortunately. I would have loved to compare all 5 of these pads for you guys and go over their different glide speeds, but I was only sent water and fire, so those are the only 2 pads that we're going to be looking at today in this video. As you can see here, these are the different speeds. You have earth at the slowest and then lightning at the fastest with everything else in between. So that's their speed chart, and you can see here the 2 that I have, water and fire, are in the middle, with water being on the slower end and fire being straight in the middle of the speed. The packaging here is a round cylindrical tube. I would have loved to see flat packaging here. You know, I love seeing flat packaging when it comes to mouse pads, just because that ensures that you don't have to wait for it to flatten out on your table over time. Even a company like Zowie, who has done rolled up packaging on their mouse pads for the longest time now, is recently switching over to flat packaging. So yeah, I would have loved to see flat packaging. Of course, it does add a little bit of extra cost for the company, but I really do think it's worth it for that quality of life experience when you're unboxing it. With that being said, it's actually not as curled up as I thought it would be when I lied it down flat, and I think that's mainly because it's so thick. That's one thing I noticed when I took it out of the box. It is 5mm thick, like it's written on the box, but I actually didn't expect it to be so heavy. These pads definitely have some weight to them, and I feel like that really helps with it lying flat on your table. So even though these aren't flat packaged, they still lie down pretty flat just due to the thickness and the weight of the pad. Now, they're not completely flat. Some of the corners are still a little bit curled, but definitely a lot better than the rolled up Zowie mouse pads. The size of these mouse pads are 450 by 400mm, and they are 5mm thick, which is actually pretty thick. It also says that the base is soft, but I will touch on that later. Here's a picture of the Motion mousepad compared to my Artisan Extra Large so that you guys can see the size difference. It is a little bit smaller than a extra large Artisan mousepad, but it is still a pretty decent size. So unless you play on a super low sensitivity, you shouldn't have any issues with the size of this pad. Unboxing the actual pad here, it does come inside of some plastic wrap. And pulling it out, you have this little stitched logo, depending on which pad you have. As you can see, this is the logo for the water pad. Very clean, actually. I think it looks very sleek. And on the back is the Fantech logo. And as you can see on the bottom, it is this nice blue color. It does have a textured rubber bottom here, so you don't really have to worry at all about it slipping, and you also have stitched edges here, which are very nice. They are below the surface, so you won't feel it on your forearm when you are using this pad. And on the bottom right, you have the Motion logo, as well as the Water Mizu logo. Just due to the sheer thickness and weight of this pad, you really don't have to worry about it sliding around at all. The rubber base is super solid, especially with that texture. Just helps it stick onto your table. So yeah, you don't have to worry at all about the grippiness of the mouse pad. It is not going anywhere once you put it on your table. One thing that I was expecting is I unboxed the water first, and since the base was blue, I thought it would actually be color coded to the mouse pad, which I thought was actually a really good idea. But I pulled out the fire mouse pad and the bottom was also blue, so it just turns out that the base of the pad is just blue no matter which variant you get. I feel like it would have been super cool just to make it so that the bottom of the pad is color coded to the mouse pad, so like the fire would have been red and then the lightning yellow, and etc, etc. Obviously, this doesn't matter at all because you're not really going to see the bottom of the mouse pad ever, but I feel like it would have been a nice little touch. But yeah, overall, these pads do feel very premium in the hand. Like I said, the stitching is below surface and very high quality as well, which is surprising because I haven't brought up the price yet. The pricing on these pads is actually around $25 USD, which is very, very good pricing. I expected this pad to be around $30 to $40 USD, which I still feel like would have been a very fair price, but I was actually pretty surprised when I checked the website, and it turns out this pad is only $25 USD. Really quick, let's go over the plushness of the pad. On the box, it does say soft, so I was expecting something similar to my Artisan Zero Soft in terms of the plushness, but the Motion Series pads are actually a little bit harder than the Artisan Softs. They definitely still have a little bit of plushness to them, but they are not as soft as a Artisan Soft base. I would put them somewhere in between an Artisan Soft and an Artisan Mid base. Alright, now let's talk about the actual glide speed and how I perform on these pads and how they feel using them just for Valorant. So in terms of the glide speed for the water, which is what you're seeing in the video right now, this is the water pad that I'm using. It actually reminded me a lot of the glide speed of the Zowie GSR. So the surface of the pad is actually very smooth. There's very little texture on the surface of the pad, but it definitely reminds me a lot of that super muddy controlled style that you would get on a Zowie GSR. The friction on the water pad is pretty high, so when you're moving your mouse around, you definitely feel it tugging at your mouse, and you definitely feel that sense of muddiness. It's not super overwhelming to the point where it's unusable, but if you are the type of person that really likes that controlled muddy feeling, then the water is definitely a really good choice. I felt like my aim had a lot more stability compared to my Artisan Zero using this pad. Just the initial friction as well as the dynamic friction on this pad is super high, and you definitely feel very connected to your mouse pad. Alright, and here in this Viper DM is me playing on the Fire pad. Now, I'm going to be completely honest, these two pads felt very similar for me. Like, this DM was right after my DM with the water pad. I immediately switched it out for the Fire pad, and these two mouse pads feel almost identical. Like, I'm pretty sure if you put me in a blind test and you told me to decipher which mouse pad was which, I would probably have a pretty hard time guessing correctly. If I really sit there and nitpick and I do A/B testing, like swap one pad out for the other immediately and I swipe my mouse around, the Fire pad does feel maybe slightly faster, but to be honest, it's not something that's super significant. So yeah, I wish I would have had the lightning pad or the earth pad so that I could try like the complete opposite ends of the spectrum to really get a feeling of the range of speed on these pads. But just trying the fire and water, which are literally right next to each other in terms of glide speed, they just feel so similar. And as you can see, I have no issue performing on this pad or the water pad. I'm hitting super nice shots with both pads, so if you're thinking about picking up any of the pads in this series, you really can't go wrong with any of the pads in the middle. But yeah, it definitely would have been interesting to see how slow the earth pad is, because the water pad is actually already pretty slow. It's probably as slow as I would want to go for a mouse pad. So it would be interesting to see how slow the earth pad actually is. Same thing with the lightning. I would actually be interested to see whether or not the lightning is similar to my Zero or if it's more similar to something like an Artisan Hien. But overall, my final thoughts on the Motion Series mousepads is that they're an extremely solid lineup of mousepads. I'm really impressed by the quality actually of these mousepads, especially given the price. If you're on a budget, like your budget's around $20 to $30 USD, and you want to pick up a super high quality mousepad, these are definitely worth looking at. The stitching on them is super high quality and the packaging is nice as well, even though I would have liked to see flat packaged. And overall, there's really nothing bad about these pads that I can see. So yeah, a super solid product release from Fantech, and if you guys are interested in checking out these mouse pads, I will leave them linked in the description below. But that's pretty much it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.